All right, it is 3 o'clock. We will go ahead and call this meeting to order. We'll go ahead and ask Councilmember Bryant to lead us in a word of prayer.
Our Heavenly Father, we just come to you today and just thank you and praise you for so many blessings you bestowed upon us. We just ask you, dear Lord, to guide and direct us as a council to the decisions that are going to be presented to us today, that dear Lord, we look to you for your guidance and direction. We ask you to be with the first responders, protect them, and be with the whole city of Odessa, dear Lord. Just guide and direct us in all we do. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen.
Okay, we're going to talk about the RO system. I'll turn it over to Mr. Kerr.
Mayor, if I could first, I think Mr. Kennington, yourself, and Mr. Bryant remember this discussion from several months ago. However, in talking to specifically these three ladies, they were very interested in the discussion itself. What was, how did this council, previous council rather, arrive at this decision? So we thought it was important to bring it back so you guys can see the entire presentation that was originally presented to the council, and then certainly answer any questions that you may have regarding.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thomas?
I appreciate that, and as you can see, I've not reinvented the wheel. I borrowed the presentation from Mr. Solomon, who made the presentation back in September. The information itself hasn't changed a lot. We've moved into preliminary design, so they've been out here on several trips and pulling information together, those types of things, but happy to talk about this subject. It's a very, one that we find a lot of interest in. So, what are our project objectives? The objectives on this were improve the quality of life for Odessa citizens. This type of project will touch everyone. It'll touch everybody, every citizen, every customer that we have in the water system. And so this, it will help improve the quality of life for all of us. It'll attract new businesses and residents. That's part of the purpose of this, would be to do so. And we'll talk a little bit more about how that happens. But every, well, not every, but many businesses here would find a great deal of benefit to our water not being as hard and high in TDS as it is. You have restaurants. I've spoken to some of the major restaurant chains. They treat their water down to 15 TDS. Our TDS starts at about 900. They see about 900 before they treat it. This process in itself, and I'll touch again on the plant needs that we have already, but this is the presentation that was there. But so we're looking at taking our TDS from like 900 down to about 300 range. We're looking at taking our hardness, which is our biggest factor, from 450 to 150. And so they will not have to treat nearly as hard as they do now. Ameripride and UniFirst are two that use a lot of water, and they do a lot of treatment to that water in order to be able to use it. All restaurants, most industries, when you think about dialysis centers, they have to treat our water a great deal because the water is used in the treatment through dialysis, and they have to take a lot of those things out of it. So there's hospitals, those types of areas. There's many of those types of things that will benefit from our water quality being better. Demonstrate environmental stewardship. In itself, you'll have a better quality water. Perhaps you won't need to buy as much bottled water, and you've got the plastic bottles. And so right now, plastic bottles, we have quite a few of them that are going to the landfills. Now, hopefully that'll change and they'll be recycling more again, but still making those plastic bottles and then taking them and remaking and reworking those plastic bottles. I mean, those types of things. To be able to drink the water at your house and be happy with it would be of some benefit there. Reduces treatment requirements for certain industries. We talked a little bit about that, but even some companies such as, we used to have a contract with Odessa Electric Power Partners. They went into a contract for about 20 years with us, and to buy our wastewater effluent. They put in a small plant to treat that effluent because they can't use high hardness or high TDS water in their process. When they use it to cool their towers and things like that, it just scales up, and so they didn't take any water. The first year or so they tried, But after that, we had a take-or-pay contract with them. It was a great benefit for the city. The city got paid, but they never could use the water because of the hardness and the condition of it. So it has a benefit to industries. Make obtaining better quality water more cost-effective to constituents and consumers in the long term. By having a better quality water, your water heaters are gonna last longer. You're gonna use less soap. Your dishwashers will last longer. If you ever change the flush valve in your toilets, I get so tired of doing that, but your flush valves will last a lot longer. You ever try to, when you want to turn the isolation valve under the toilet off so you can change that flush valve, you're scared to death to touch it. It's all caked up in minerals and everything else. It's corroded, and that thing will break. And so having our water conditioned to a better situation, you won't have as much of that. Now, all those things sound like small things in the end, but the overall benefit adds up to quite a bit. This would improve our wastewater quality, not just in our effluent, but in our water quality going through our distribution system. Our water has a lot of sulfates in it, generates a lot of gases and things like that. We're not gonna get rid of that, but we're gonna take a lot of those sulfates, about 2/3 of those sulfates out of the water. And so it becomes much better. And once it gets to the wastewater plant, lots of corrosion and issues we deal with there because of the high hardness and the high DDS. And so that will help benefit the wastewater treatment. I can't tell you what that cost is, but I can tell you that it does. It will benefit. The effluent leaving the wastewater plant. If we look at this from a long-term perspective, you know, a lot of times we talk now about, I'll use the term toilet to tap, but reusing our water. Let's assume that down the road, the industries don't need the water, not to the point that it's beneficial to us, and the city wants to recycle water. If this water has already been conditioned through the water treatment plant, you've had good water when it came to you, it gets to the wastewater plant, it's a lot better. When we retreat it to bring it back in, much easier. Makes the process a ton better. So for the long term, you've got a good plan for those types of issues. We can retrofit existing aging facilities and infrastructure. That's part of the project. And we want to be cost effective.
Tom, go over how they judge hardness on water with TDS and things like that with the new council members.
Hardness is a calcium carbonate basically in your water, and the reason our water is so hard is because there's so much calcium carbonate, limestone. Okay, our water travels through and across limestone, and so that mineral in your water creates hardness, and that's the on your glasses you always see all the smoky color or the foggy color on your glasses, deposits on your shower doors everywhere. A lot of that has to do with hardness. TDS is the total dissolved salts, and what TDS is chlorides, sulfates, all kinds of minerals like that that are in your water. And water loves to attach to things. It's naturally occurring that way. Matt can probably tell you better on some of these things than I'm telling you, but water loves to attach to things. So it's always looking to grab something. If you get mineral water or truly RO'd water, sometimes you'll notice a little metallic taste on mineral water and that kind of stuff. I mean, not mineral, demineralized water, but and that's because it's trying to grab onto minerals and things like that. So it's a natural constituent, their situation. So by using RO, you're pushing that water through a really fine membrane, and you're pushing it really hard. The cost with RO is the electrical cost. But you're pushing that water through that membrane and leaving all those minerals behind. And so that's the cost associated with it, the largest cost associated with it. So this talks a little bit about the raw water supply that we have. TCEQ sets a state maximum contaminant level of 1,000 TDS. That is not a requirement. Okay, it's not a regulated number. It's a number where they say we want you to try and achieve this. Much of Texas, the reason Texas is so much higher than the EPA is because a lot of Texas has limestone and minerals and other things that contribute. But the TDS ends up. As you can see, our TDS over the years has been higher, and we've been actually better in the last several years from maybe some of the drought and refilling of lakes and things like that may have contributed to us starting to see some benefit. Back when we used Spence, Matt, how bad was Spence when you get your
I don't want
TDS?
to take up your time, but there's a story about Bob Darrington back in 1992 or something, and I'm there when he said that. But Spence, there was a problem with Spence whereby this natural dam had broken and a lot of brine water got over in there, and it was as bad as it could be. The TDS, that total dissolved solids number, getting to the city of Odessa was right at 3,000 parts per million because of that. And that was right before Lake Ivy came online. And people were calling in complaining because it was so bad. And we were just waiting for Ivy to fill up, which it did in record time. Bob Darrington made the famous comment that it said, just let it come. You know, when Ivy comes online, they're gonna think we're all heroes and it's gonna be the best water in the whole world. And of course, that's what happened. This Spence is different today than that, but
The levels are still pretty close to the 1,000 range or so, but it's much better than it was then.
Tom, is that where they get the, you know, when you drive into a city and it has excellent water quality or fair water quality, is that where they get that from the TDS?
No, that's from compliance with the regulations, and they're really not doing that much anymore. They let it ride, as I understand it. But yeah, there were, back at the time, that was based on how well you complied with all the regulations and that type of thing. So this is a chart of our hardness over the, and it's the largest problem component that we have in terms of treatment. And so as you can see, our hardness has been as high as 700. We generally run in the 400, 450 range on hardness. And again, this is what is really rough on a lot of your dishes. It affects your taste a great deal and makes the water less pleasant. So the issues with TDS, salty taste, chloride, sodium, deposits and staining, water heaters, boilers, sprinklers. Hardness, if calcium and magnesium are components, consumption of soap, etc., which we do have calcium very much, and affects production costs of the industry. So things that you do, it's going to cause some issues for you generally, okay? This is pipe segments that you would see. We've seen this I've seen this in San Angelo, I've seen it here, scaling in your iron pipes and those issues, stained glassware, things we've kind of talked about. So these were some of the things that were the impetus to looking into whether there was a way for us to make our water quality better. So we started out on the project, the first thing we did was the existing water, 4 phases. Existing water treatment plant condition assessment. Wanted to check to see how well the plant would last, what the condition of the plant was, what needs to be done, is it worth making an investment there. And we looked at, also started looking at the desalination process, modeling and evaluation. The next phases were pilot plant investigations to confirm the technologies that would be selected, design of the improvements, and construction started. So we took phase 1 and we evaluated the plant conditions. And the issues that came out of this were not of a significant factor in that the plant is no good and you want to move off and not use it anymore or find a solution to replace the plant. But there were definite issues that we did run into, things that were very concerning. The plant has a 55 MGD capacity, it's well above what our consumption rates have been. Some facilities and equipment are in good condition, others need improvements, you would expect. And the condition assessment determined needed improvements to sustain the water treatment plant. Define projects, estimated costs, and establish some priorities. Recommended improvements were grouped into 3 general categories: a short-term, medium-term, and long-term. The things that we found that were reaching their useful service life: process equipment, our flocculators. We replaced one flocculator, started before I got here, I think, and then, well, Matt was still here, and then the other flocculators in need of being replaced. We've had a filter completely fail on us. We have actuators and equipment that are getting to be a problem. So there's a lot of process equipment, pumps, and we're replacing a couple of pumps right now. Electrical, our electrical system turned out to be in much worse condition than we had. When they opened up the cabinets and saw the back, what was looking like on the bus bars and things like that, they were very concerned. And so our electrical system is a primary concern for us. Instrumentation and controls is you'll hear also SCADA, supervisory control and data acquisition. These are sensors and things that are out in the system so that you can sit at the operation station at the plant and you can see how much water is in the tank. The Dawn Tower or over at the Oakwood Tower. You can operate valves in places. You can monitor your chemical feeds and things like that. And so it's and that goes. The issues that we have with our I&C are, one, very dilapidated, not entirely consistent. You've got some equipment over here that doesn't really work well with equipment over here, or that type of thing. And so it's on the wastewater side and the water side. So the improvements we're talking about, needed improvements, are both wastewater and water for the instrumentation and controls.
Tom, you may have mentioned this already, but when was that plant first built?
It's gonna be back in the 50s, wasn't it?
Okay, so it's-
Matt, is that what you remember?
I think in 58, I swear to it, I think it was 58, the original plant.
To make sure we're meeting TCEQ standards, one of the things that they looked at was the filter beds. Our filter beds are not of the standard that they would request or require on a new design. They do work, they perform, but they don't meet the new standards and things like that. So they are performing okay, but they're not, they do have some definite, like I said, we had one fail in the last year that, about 2 years. Filter number 6, the under drain just completely gave out, and so the filter's not usable. Structural and safety related improvements, so handrails, stairways, we have some corroded stairways and things like that. So in identifying all of that, and further down in the presentation I'll talk a little bit, but those costs came out to an estimated $65 million for what we need to do right now to get the electrical systems and the I&C systems and those things up to snuff. So
And that's for the water.
that's for the existing plant, to get the existing
water.
plant up to.
So Tom, that's to say that stuff we have to do regardless if we do the other component, correct?
Yes, sir.
None of this is due because changes so it would accommodate the RO. I mean, we need all of this, right?
No, even if you don't do RO, you need this.
You need all of this.
So from there, we move into, we had split 1A and 1B, so we did the water treatment plant evaluation and pretty much had that squared away. And we moved into 1B, which was the desalination process modeling and evaluation. And so Carollo looked at the finished water quality. What are our goals? How far do we want to take the water down, right? Or how well do we want to make it? Establish plants capacities using a Blue Planet model. They have a modeling system, a computer modeling system, where they can take different chemicals and different processes and inject them into the model, and they can see how things will perform at what you would call desktop type modeling or tabletop type modeling. They developed and compared planning level cost estimates based on that, because that would tell you, okay, I need to use this much chemical in order to get here, or I need this large of a process in order to get there. They evaluated the effects of the finished water goals on the distribution system and end users, because when we change the water quality, we need to make sure that we aren't going to create a lot of problems in the distribution system. And so part of the modeling, part of the process was to make sure that those things will occur. Say if we just RO'd all the water, a lot of times when people ask me, we're gonna RO all the water. We can't put out RO water, as RO water will eat up all the pipelines and we'll have really big problems. You blend the water back, so we take it, the way it all worked out is we bring all the water into the plant, go through the main processes up front, the flocculation and sedimentation. Then we pull 2/3 of the water off. We send 1/3 through our standard filters. We take 2/3 through a microfiltration RO process. And that cleans up the water substantially, and then when you blend them back, we use a little bit of chemical processing to make sure that the pHs and things will marry well with the system as it is. Go ahead.
You said the RO will eat the pipe?
Right, because when we were talking about, you pull all those minerals out of the water wants to grab those minerals.
Oh,
So you put it in iron pipe, it's gonna start grabbing all that
grabbing
stuff,
everything in.
and it'll corrode it out. So, one of the restaurant people that I talked to, one of the chains, and she said, well, first thing I called her and I just said, hey, I was just gonna ask you a few questions about, RO and that type of thing. She said, oh, don't worry, I've got stainless steel piping, so if you send me RO water, I'm good. And I told her, well, I don't think I can get that to you, but they recognize those effects in their buildings, because they do take that water down to 15. I mean, it's just really low. Conducted a customer survey, so we did do a customer survey to ask people about what their concerns with the water and what they'd like to see. And we had a good response on that. And we developed a system-wide SCADA master plan. So they put together a master plan that would tell us how we can standardize our equipment, what type of processes we need to do to make that an effective system.
For those that may not know, what does SCADA mean?
Supervisory control and data acquisition. That's the instruments will send back signals. So like flow meters even, like right now we have automated meter infrastructure, which we put in about the time, started before I got here, Matt started it. And all of our meters transmit a signal back to our computer systems, and so we know how much water you're using, and big boys watching or whatever. But anyways, same thing with treatment plant processes, lift stations. We monitor lift stations to see if they're running, if they're working okay. We see pump stations. We can see Yukon from the water plant, so we know if the Yukon pump station's operating.
If you go to Big Springs, when you go into CRMWD's control room, they just have monitors, and they're monitoring the lakes, they're monitoring the well fields, and all that, and they do it from one room. Just so they know if Odessa needs more water, they can turn this valve, bring more water to us. Pretty impressive.
So, the discussions were, what do we want to set our goals at? At first, we started talking about TDS, and again, 1,000 is a state standard, 500 is an EPA standard. Again, these are not regulated standards. These are what they call secondary limits, so they're not regulated. They're more about making water pleasant and that type of thing. And these graphs kind of show, this is Odessa. If you look at our TDS as an average, the orange bar is the average. Ours is the highest of the group of the ones that they pulled up as a comparison. This is San Angelo. San Angelo has some local lakes. I'm assuming that's the reason there's maybe a little less. Now they're using a groundwater source that may have helped them reduce that as well. But almost 90% of what San Angelo used, at least 95% when I was there, was Ivy, same as we do. But you can see their statistics are a little lower. Maximum levels for us higher. San Angelo's a little lower. I looked at Midlands, they're similar. They use a lot of Ivy water. The last few years, they've started using another source.
Midlands are similar to what?
Ours,
Okay,
actually
so
both.
this in Midland, this third one, Midland is similar to ours.
It's North Texas.
Right,
water.
this is Odessa, these three bars, this is the average, this is the minimum normally seen, and this is the maximum. And then this is San Angelo. These are North Texas Municipal Water District, serves a lot of the Dallas area. You've got San Antonio, Fort Worth, Austin, and Dallas. And so you see some of the standards that are.
Could I ask a question, Mr. Carr? In comparison to all of these cities, what do we fare at as far as revenue generation? in comparison to these other cities? Are we neck and neck? Are we in the ballpark? Are we nowhere in comparison?
I'm not sure that I have an answer specifically. There's a lot of caveats to those questions, I guess you would say. Say Dallas buys, I'm trying to make sure I'm telling you, one of these buys their water, say, from someone else that's either treated or raw or whatever, just like raw water. So there's different factors there, but in terms of their revenue, I don't know specifically how much, say, return on
Well,
investment or anything.
I guess what I'm wanting to know is, in comparison to how much they spend versus how many residents they have, and compared to what we're spending versus how many residents we have. Because if they're spending, let's say, $1 to get their water down, let's say Dallas is spending $1, then do we have that in our budget? I guess is what I'm getting at. That dollar in our budget actually to get the same type of quality that Dallas is getting.
Right. I can't tell you exactly right now, but we do try to compare ourselves with other rates and things, but their water source is likely better than ours. So there's a lot of places that don't have to RO in order to have the source we do. When Abilene started taking IV water, Abilene has other sources. Abilene immediately built an RO plant before they would take IV water because they didn't want to blend that kind of saline water or.
How many sources of water do we have right now?
How many sources do we have?
CRMWD, that's it.
That's it.
Yeah, CRMWD, now they have 3 reservoirs, a couple of well fields, and so there's.
So Tom, with this RO plant, we're thinking that our TDS would be at about 450, right? That's our
Right.
goal,
Well,
which still
300
makes us worse than everybody else, but not as bad.
300 to 450 is what we're really shooting for on TDS.
Okay.
The TDS numbers that you see here are over a longer period of time. Our TDSs are down around 900 now, so if we took it down 2/3, it'd be about 300. The recommended range, 400 to 600 for us. The other cities' hardness, similar type of situation. Again, our hardness, because of our water sources, is much higher. These other plants, like Fort Worth, is not RO water. They don't have to. Their water source is just that much better than ours in that sense. Don't really need to talk about this a whole lot specifically, but this was the process that they use in terms of an engine computer modeling. And so they're looking at 150, 200, and 250 as our hardness goals, and those goals drive the TDS way down. So TDS wasn't the relevant factor, the factor was our hardness. They use what they call a Monte Carlo simulation, and they can go into that with you, but that's a statistical simulation in which you're not always using the maximum amount of water, and your water's not always at the worst condition. So you don't necessarily want to design for the worst condition at maximum flow. You want to design it based on a simulation, a statistical simulation of what our water quality has been paired with what our water usage has been. That makes the project more efficient in cost and size. So this talks a little more about that simulation and how that's worked out. Now, what this demonstrates is a graph that shows if we were looking at the RO capacity for our plant, and these are the hardness. So this is 150. The orange line is 150. 250 is the orange line. The red line is 150 hardness. So as you're going this way, your water's getting better. Okay, you're making sure water's better quality. This is the capacity. How big would the plant need to be based on our usage, and the frequency of how much of the time you would be at 150 or less. So if you were looking at this red line at 15 MGD, you're going to be below 150 75% of the time. So in looking at that chart, If we had a plant that was about 18 MGD, we would hit 150 95% of the time. If we had a plant that was just right at 15, we would be hitting 250 about 95% of the time. And this is just a kind of indicating how we started looking at the size of the plant. So this is a frequency of actually achieving that treatment goal. So if we wanted to reach 150 98% of the time, we would be using a plant at about 16 MGD. And so 16 MGD plant, which is the smallest size we would recommend for this process, would indicate that almost 84% of the time you would be at least below 150 on hardness, 94% of the time you'd be below 200, and 98% of the time you'd be below 250. So from those studies, we moved into the pilot plant investigation. Pilot plant's really important for compliance. Make sure you're being compliant. TCEQ required it up until a few years ago. But if you're gonna spend this kind of money, you wanna make sure what you're gonna do is gonna be effective. And the pilot plant is what ensures that that process will work. So process insurance, in other words. Let's not go spend millions of dollars and not get what we thought. That would be the worst thing we could do. So we completed it in April of 2018. Give me a date off, I guess. That's the future. The main objective is to confirm sizing, performance, and estimate operation and maintenance. Another objective is to select a robust system. We don't always going to be using the same water source. There may be times we're using another water source, and such as if we went to Spence. Spence is going to be more salt more TDS than Ivy does. If we go to our well fields, that's really great water right now, but as you deplete that well field, you're going to move into more of a brackish water. So there are other sources. We want to make sure this plant is a robust system. Pre-treatment of the water prior to reverse osmosis and microfiltration. We need to use some more chemicals in our flocculation process to help remove products more effectively.
What is flocculation?
Flocculation is you use paddles or stirrers. You stir the water. And so what you do to start out with is you add alum and polymer. And polymer's like snot, okay? Just put it in plain English. Ends up like snot. You get it good and wet and it gets real sticky. So all the little tiny particles in the water get stuck together. And they stick together, become more of a
And we're supposed to drink water now.
But we pull it out. That's where we go through the sedimentation, basically sheds it out. You know what's funny? If you look into cloud seeding, that's the same thing they're doing with cloud seeding. The same type of deal. You're putting particles up in the air to try and grab the water and make it fall out. Okay. So pre-treatment pipe loop test was conducted, so we'd make sure that we could see what the effects would be on the system. This kind of shows a couple of treatment trains that we tested. One was, we came through our standard process, flocculation and sedimentation, and then we went through our standard filters, and we went straight into an RO process. Then we had another process in which we dropped off before filtration. We went through membrane filtration, then we went through reverse osmosis. We did not send it out to the distribution system. This was a pilot, so the water was not distributed. We did learn a great deal in this process. Our water treatment process is not effective for just placing the RO in front, right after it. We have what they call a silt density index. Our water has a very high silt density index, and it varies quite a bit. But it will just foul an RO
Silt
membrane.
meaning dirt?
Silt being really, really fine material, right? So it did not work well with the RO directly. But when we used the microfiltration, the low pressure membrane filtration, it worked excellent. It worked really efficiently, pulled out that silt problem, and the RO process worked extremely well. So that's what he's saying is optimum results there. This is a picture of some of the RO skids that were used. That's an RO, portable RO type unit. This is another one. The RO membranes are in these tubes. They look like PVC pipe. Basically, I guess you could say are. The membrane slides inside, and so the water comes in, gets pushed through that membrane. The clean water comes out through a tube off that membrane, and now the water that was going through is twice as bad or twice as nasty as it was before. And then you send that off to another train, and you do you can do multiple trains up to 3 or more.
How many gallons are we talking about before it has to be changed out?
General, you're seeing about 5 years before you need to, worry about a membrane change out. But you're looking at, you will be cleaning on a certain frequency, say every 3 months you need to do a full clean. Probably at least once or twice a month you're doing a short.
So how much to replace those membranes?
They've got it built into their model, but I can't tell you specifically the number.
And Tom, what's the recovery rate on the water?
Recovery rate, because we're looking at 2 cycles, is 80%. So you've got, for every 10 gallons you put in, you're gonna get 8 clean and 2 that's really nasty. You can go to a third stage and try to get up into the 95% range, but you're going to be paying so much more for that little amount of water. It's really not efficient. The TDS, so say we're talking 900, the TDS coming out of that 80% process is about 8,000 TDS. So you go from 900 to 8,000. You go from your hardness being about 450 up to the 3,000, 3,300 range. So the water is really nasty. This is the microfiltration.
The 20%,
Yeah.
the 20%.
Right.
I thought you said the 80%. I didn't.
No, 80% is the clean water.
Yeah.
20% is the bad water. And then those are the microfiltration units that we're testing. We used 3 different brands. We had 2 different brands of RO units so that we could be competitive in our process. This is talking about the manufacturers. Ranges of fluxes. Fluxes is how efficient the water is, how fast you can feed the water across the units. Has to do with the capacity of the units. That's the process. So we did find out we had to have the MFUF. It improved our efficiency. It also helped with high loading rates, and it allows for a more robust and flexible system.
Again, MFUF is micro and ultra filtration, right?
Yes, sir. That's right. And the RO consistently was of a high quality water, confirmed our capacity requirements and established design parameters. And we did see that we needed a higher island dosage with our water to have the process work well. This is a copy of the pipe leak testing. So we took actual pipe out of our system, put it in the system, and ran the RO water through the process. We would also blend it back a little bit so it went straight RO water, just like we would be trying to do at the end of the plant once we finish the process. The testing was favorable.
And Tom, on those pipe sections, we just randomly cut them out of our system, right?
Yes, sir. So the coupon tests were run to reflect actual conditions. Blended water was continuously pumped through those during the test. That process went on for several months. A re-equilibrium period is to be expected. Whenever you make the change, we're gonna have probably some rusty water and some things like that occur. That's gonna happen. There just can't make it perfect, but it will dissipate over some time. You flush the lines a little bit, get the water acclimated.
And how about the smell? Are we gonna be able to cut some of that smell out of the water?
You shouldn't have much smell out of the water, even now.
Oh, yes.
You getting hydrosulfide?
Oh, yeah, it's.
It's coming out of your drain, actually.
Yeah, oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
What'll happen is, that'll happen with, there's some places too, older houses can have this, a lot of times people will smell hydrogen sulfide sewer gas in your house, right?
Mhm.
And they'll call us and part of the issue either can be that the drain is not being, your P-trap is not full or staying full. Some people will use a bleach or something like that to clean that P-trap, and it will help for a while. If that doesn't help you, what happens is, in your house, there's a vent pipe that goes up out of the roof of your house. So all the gases are intended to go up and out of that, coming from the sewer main even, but coming up through that vent pipe. And so the trap is to keep the gas from coming in the house. But if you're smelling it, even if your traps are full and you've cleaned them and that type of thing, your sewer pipe going up in your wall, the old gaskets have gone bad. And so the gas is leaking out of the pipe.
So what about, you know, occasionally you'll have to treat the water a little bit more aggressively, is that right? Like additional chlorine or something along that line? And so, you know how when that happens, you do get that chlorine smell? So with it, with 2/3 of our water going through the RO, is that going to help improve that on those occasions, or?
We, our water starts out as a water that has precursors for what they call trihalomethane. And so we can't use straight chlorine all the time. There are EPA and regulations as to how much of these byproducts we can leave in the water. There were studies done back in the 70s that would indicate if you had over certain amounts that you had a higher chance of getting cancer. And so those regulations were established based on that. So we have a lot of bromoforms, a lot of bromide in our water, and it forms THMs like that when it gets chlorine. So the way you keep that from being a problem is you add ammonia with the chlorine. And so when you do that, as you go out in the system, that chlorine is killing any bugs or anything that may occur. And when the chlorine kills that, the ammonia can be left behind. And so if the longer the water's out in the system, that ammonia can feed what you can call a biomass or something like that that's in your pipe. It's really kind of be a real thin film or something like that. And when that starts to happen, your chlorine's getting dissipated and you're not having enough chlorine out in the system. And your trihalomethanes can also start to escalate on you because you're trying to battle that. You're starting to feed more chlorine, you're forming more trihalomethanes. And so once in a while, once a year, we'll go out and we'll actually feed straight chlorine in the system. We don't do chloramines, but it's a short enough period that it doesn't demonstrate a health hazard for you. And so we'll do it for a month or up to 2 months, and that will clean that biofilm and help clean the system out so that we can go back to treating with the chlorines. Now, I don't know if that was exactly your question, but.
Yeah, I was just wondering when you have to go through and do that with the RO system, if it will make it less.
Make it better.
For the consumer, you know, not be quite as, not the smell.
Probably, it should have some benefits to our chlorination process. We should have to use less chlorine and some things like that, but in the end, that process itself is still gonna have to happen, and so you will still have that chlorine smell when that occurs. Yeah, it really won't change that for us. RO doesn't remove those bromoforms well for us, those precursors, so. So we went through the study. We've come through and selected what process we're looking at. You're coming in, this is our rapid mixes where we put the chemicals in, flocculation, sedimentation basins. This is our media filters. We're looking at dropping off of those media filters with another train that will feed through the microfiltration, ultrafiltration. There's a backwash tank for washing these units, and then going through the RO unit. Once it's RO'd, it gets, you blend it back with the water coming off the traditional filters. You hit it again with chlorine, ammonia. We'll be putting some carbon dioxide and products in to help with that pH adjustment to get it back to a water that's similar to what we have. And then it'll pump out to the distribution system.
Yeah.
So, highlights for MF on UF, et cetera, et cetera. Same thing that I just told you as far as that really goes. The MF-UF supply from the filters feed channel or the filter effluent channel, before it goes to the filters actually. And constant feed flow through the MFUF units and the RO units. The more consistent your flow is, the more efficient you can be. And dedicated cartridge filter and RO. If we have to say we have a power outage, instead of paying for a generator large enough to run those RO units, you just let it shut down for while you're out. So you can bypass the RO process when you need to.
On that, when you're talking about a power outage, which that makes perfect sense to me, is there a guideline on if the power's out for 30 minutes, or is it an immediate? Does the
Yeah.
bypass occur immediately, or?
No, there'll already be water working in the system, and we'll be able to make a transition. But if once the power goes down, those pumps are gonna lose power right away. So, yeah, you're gonna pretty much shut the RO system out pretty quickly.
Oh, okay.
And then we'll make adjustments to go bypass it and get around. So, these are just some of the steps of integration. Similar to what we just saw. This is a conceptual schematic of the plant. This building over here would be a new chemical feed building. We were taking out one of our old maintenance buildings over here. Then these are the MFUF units running through here, and these are the RO units. This building and that footprint can do a 24 MGD capacity, 24 million gallons a day. And so those skids, you would build it to the capacity we wanted now, and then you would add RO skids later as deemed necessary.
And with that being said, with our population increasing, if it increases at the level that is anticipated, is this sufficient to take care of 170,000 people?
Yeah. The 24 MGD will take us out for quite a few years, once we expand to that. You can build up, you can actually go vertical, or we are looking at some other properties adjacent to us that may be available for expansion.
The current proposal that we're working on is how many MGD?
The minimum we want to do is 16 MGD, but the proposal we're working on is 20 right now. Brine pipeline. So one of the most expensive things about, one of the expensive things about RO is what do you do with that really nasty water that's coming out, the brine? Because you've got 8,000 milligrams per liter of TDS, those types of things. The options that are out there, deep well injection, evaporation ponds, spray irrigation, zero liquid discharge, which is someone taking the water, you actually taking and demineralizing it, that type of thing, or discharge to the water reclamation facility. El Paso does deep well injection. Deep well injection is expensive. You have to, the permitting process itself is not easy, and then the wells can be expensive to manage, but it is not necessarily the most expensive. Evaporation ponds, Abilene started with evaporation ponds, and they had a great deal of difficulty because water that has that much salts in it doesn't evaporate well. So it really requires a large area. Spray irrigation, somewhat similar. They're spraying all that heavy, hard TDS, high TDS water through, just look at your irrigation systems at your house. Think about it being that much heavier, that much worse. So it's a high expense type system. Zero liquid discharge, there's really still a lot of development going on in that area. Discharge to the water reclamation facility is the most economical process for us. So we can take the water and take it to the end of the Darrington, and we can blend it back. And our water quality will still be slightly higher than what comes into the water plant, but it won't be a lot higher. It'll be fairly similar. But the main thing here, we have to be able to take it to the Darrington so we can dispose of it and nobody takes it. But the petroleum industry is highly interested in this water. anything less than 10,000 TDS water to them is prime water for use in the fracking industry. They don't want to use raw water. They don't want to use water that you normally would bring into the front of your plant and use. They want wastewater. And so that's why we're able to sell our effluent from the Darrington for what we are able to do. And we have spoken with several customers, and they are highly interested in the water. To the point that potentially the sale of the water could all possibly pay for the plant, the actual construction. I'm sorry?
Over what period of time? Like over 20 years or?
What we're talking to them about, we're giving several options in the RFP that we're about ready to issue. But the Midland, when they did their project, Midland had to do their project in order to put secondary treatment in their plant. They had a small amount of capacity for that, but not enough in order to use their water for industrial purposes. So Midland put out an RFP, said we need $120 million up front to build our plant, and then what will you pay us for the water after that? And so our RFP in this case, at the Darrington, we didn't have to do that. The water was available, it was already to the standards needed, so we could sell it directly out of the plant. So it's almost all revenue. Now, this
They brought the
process.
pipeline to us. Pioneering brought pipeline to us.
Yes, sir, they built 20 miles of 20-inch HDPE pipeline to us, sure did.
Can I ask just a quick question, just interject and step on what
No,
Ms.
you're
White
good.
was saying? Let's say we go into this contract with them and the oil market, the economy falls out and they decide to shake up out of here. Does that leave us stuck holding the bag, or what is that?
Part of the
Take-
Yes, sir. The part of the RFP process is a couple of things. When we did the one at the Darrington, it was take or pay. You're either gonna take it or pay us. And it was the same contract we had with Odessa Ector Power Partners. For 20 years, Odessa Ector Power Partners paid us on an annual basis and used virtually no water, very little water. Is that correct, Matt? I mean, they might have used some for cleaning their ponds from time to time or something like that, but they didn't use the water. And so it would be the same process. When we do the RFP, we wanna make sure whoever we are going to make a contract with demonstrates that they are a substantial party. In other words, we don't want to just make a contract with somebody who can't hold up to it. If we get the money up front to build the plant, we don't have to do a bond. We have the money up front, and then it's up to them to use that water down the road. And so that's, we've talked to a vendor who is very interested in this, and he appears to be a very large vendor. The individual we're talking to, he's not a large person, he just works for a very large entity. He is a primary source for a very large petroleum industry. And so, his indications have been that this is not an issue. But until we see the paperwork, we don't know.
So the RFP would actually provide, the vendor would actually provide the money to us to build the plant up front?
That is, again, because we want to make sure we maximize our opportunity. So the vendor, we are asking for the vendor to, that type of proposal. We're saying the city of Odessa feels that the water has at least this much value. That value would help make this happen. Because if we don't put in an RO plant, they don't get water. And if they don't pay enough for the RO plant, we're not gonna do the RO plant. So we're telling them, we're giving them options though. We're saying, okay, provide us so many millions of dollars up front. How much will you pay us on top of that for the water? So let's say it takes them 15 years to recover that front money. Then after 15 years, they start paying us on top of that for the water. So there's a couple of options there. One is a certain amount of money, another one's an even larger amount of money. Another option is for them to give us a specific amount, start paying us up front for the water. So say that instead of paying us, let's just use a number, 30 cents a barrel. And we're asking for more than that, but 30 cents a barrel, in which they recover the water over time, they'll pay us 40 cents a barrel, just straight payment. Well, then we can bond the project using that money versus less money for the upfront, see. So we're leaving those options open. We're leaving it also up to them to tell us if they have an alternate option. We just want the best option we can find from them.
So how many, are we selling it in gallons or barrels?
1,000 gallons.
And what?
1,000 gallons.
We think of it in 1,000 gallons, they think of it in barrels. So the numbers directly correlate, 42 barrels in a 42 gallons in a barrel. So you can convert from that.
Okay, so how many are we thinking? We're thinking that we would be able to sell 20% of 16 million gallons per day? Or does it end up being less than that? That's the 20% of this brine. Does it end up being 20% that's sellable, or does that come down as well?
No, it will be the 20% or better, right?
So what is the demand then for this water? How many million gallons?
They want more than that.
They want more than 3.2 million a day.
Their only question to us is how soon can we get it? But they have hundreds of thousands, multiple hundreds of thousands of barrels per day that they're indicating they need for the processes.
And it's, okay.
This one is just a small fraction of what they do.
Yes, this is a small fraction of what they need.
Well, it's kind of like Pioneer did, you know, there's a minimum, but they said, give us everything you got.
Right.
You know?
Our contract with Pioneer is 4.2 million gallons a day, take or pay. So they either take it or pay for 4.2 million gallons a day at $6 right now. It escalates over time. So 24,000, just using a rough number, $24,000 a day they pay us, whether they take the water or not. But they're taking 5.2, 5.4 million gallons a day consistently. The only reason they're not getting more water from us is their pipeline has too much of a restriction. They're working on it, they're trying to improve their restrictions in their pipeline, but they would take, more. If I could get them 6 million gallons a day, they would take it. And when Midland's plant comes online, Midland's plant will produce closer to 10 million gallons a day. Concho is buying water from GCA, they buy about 2 million gallons a day off of GCA. So all of these companies are needing water. So the pipeline is being sized to and it's gonna have to go all the way from the water plant to the Darrington. So this is a significant part of our cost. Okay. So we started, say, 200 feet of head up at the plant, at the water plant. We're down below around 50 down at the RO facility, at the Darrington. We're looking at capturing some of that. We can put in a power generator on that system and we can capture some of that energy back. So this kind of demonstrates, we've got the water plants up here, the Darrington's over here. So we've got to build a pipeline that would go from one to the other. So we've got a couple of routes that we've been analyzing. One was to go down University, which we've nixed. We're not going down the new road.
And is this pipeline included in the 80 million?
Yes. So this just kind of reiterates some things we've talked about. I don't need to go through all the details. I don't think you want me to go through all the details, but this is talking about the SCADA needs we need and how we'll make that work, master plans and things like that. So the project cost, just the plant improvements, just to get the plant up, is $65 million. If we build a 20 MGD facility at the same time we're doing this, it comes out to about $145 million. If you break the 20 MGD facility out, it's about $90 million. So there's a cost efficiency to doing these together, because there's some things that we won't need to do in the plant upgrade, but it's hard anyway. And there's things that we can do with the RO process that will be efficient. That's really just relaying what we talked about. The engineering and design and construction is included in those estimates as well, which is somebody being here to make sure they build it properly. And this chart demonstrates, say, the operation and maintenance costs for an RO facility. If we're trying to meet 250 hardness, we're looking at about 37 cents per 1,000 gallons. If we're looking at trying to meet the 200 hardness, you're looking at about 41 cents per 1,000, 45 cents for hardness. And then our MF unit's about a nickel to 8 cents per 1,000, depending on how hard we want to press the water. Our existing plant O&M is $1.15, and so our O&M is going to go up as we have to use more chemicals to be more aggressive. So our water plant O&M would go from up $1.15 up to about $1.52. Our raw water costs, we use the number $3. It's really a little bit less than that right now, but we use that number as a round number. So your total operation and maintenance for the facility would be in the $4.50 to $5 a thousand range. That does not include the capital costs. So that's the cost for operating and maintaining, replacing membranes down the road, keeping the pumps up and those types of things.
So what does that do, that 42 cents? What does that do? That's about 10% higher than what the cost is now, right?
Right.
So is it fair to say then that that's a 10% increase on water bills?
That's, yes, it could have that effect, yes.
Would it be more than that, or is that a reasonable amount?
Based on what we know from the study and where we are right now, that's a reasonable number.
Would that be 10% on just the water part of the bill or the total? Just on the water part of the bill?
You would want to
Okay.
take it out of the same, right, of the water part. But then, again, so there is a cost, that's gonna be electricity, chemicals, and some things like that that will be affected. So we did the customer survey, learned quite a few things from that. We got responses from almost all of the zip codes in the area. We had a total of 1,500, almost 1,600 responses. Kind of a breakdown of the zip code areas that we saw responses from. The quick facts. This is about 10% of the people use a water softener. Almost 70% spend up to $500 per year maintaining the water softener. So 70% of the people that use a water softener are paying about $500 a year for that unit. They purchase up to 500 pounds per year of salt. So that's how you do the softening at home. And one of the things that you would note if you looked at our data is, so the water plant, the TDS comes in at about so let's say 1,000, just for a number. It's close, 900, something like that. When you get to the Darrington, the water that comes into the Darrington is 1,500. It's about a 50% increase. And some of that is consolidation, I guess you'd say, but a big part of that is water softening, the salt that's exchanged. And so about 25, a little over 20% of them that purchase up to 1,000 pounds per year of salt to do that. So about a little over 50% use an RO unit. Clean and replace fixtures annually, about 45, a little over 40%. Clean and replace fixtures biannually, we're looking at about 30%, 20%. And then regularly purchase bulk bottled water or ice. We're looking at almost 80% or even above. And purchase 1 to 50 gallons of bulk water each month. Again, you're up over the 70% mark.
Mr. Kerr, would it be safe to say that any type of price increase they'll see at the pump, they'll save here on the back end of this?
Yes, sir.
Just a question. I know with water heaters, we have a lot of trouble at the restaurant, but you have that fill tube that goes all the way down, and that tube disintegrates, and you can't draw all the hot water out. You can only draw maybe the top half.
Yes.
Is that because of the hardness?
Yes, sir. So we had commercial responses as well and industrial responses, and these are kind of the levels of usage of things they do to condition water. Main concerns of the respondents: taste, 83%. We're not happy with the taste. Hardness, 91%. Difficulty lathering, 61%. I think you need a bit more beer in your shampoo, and that works better. Free treatment, as you know, those are the industrial responses there. They have concerns about how much pretreatment they have to do, corrosion, and other writing comments. We had about 25% of those. When you look at the lifespan of some of these units, evaporative coolers may not be as common as they used to be, but you can see you would go from about 16 years up to about 18, a little over 18, 19 years. Water heaters, something that all of us use. 7 years, you could get up to almost, well, you get up to about 11 years on a water heater if you had 150 hardness. So.
What exactly is a evaporative cooler?
Evaporative cooler, now you've got centralized air conditioning. These are the ones, these are the ones that spray the water out in it.
Sorry.
Dishwashers, similar things.
Well, what about a VCR?
Right.
Betamax.
Try to keep your water out.
Yeah.
I had to make a max one. Those things are heavy. So looking at, they took ownership percentages and then cost of units and installation. They correlated that to a savings over time and by units. So at 250 hardness, this is a community number. So for the whole community, you'd see $4 to $5 million of savings annually for the whole city, for all the people, customers. And annual household savings is on this side, you would see about $120 a year in annual cost for those fixtures. What could the residents save if Odessa provided improved water quality? Again, similar type of graph. If you have a water softening unit, you're going to save, well over $600 a year. Gasoline usage for equipment supply. Water softening salt purchases, you're talking, close to $100 per year. So there's savings in these things. If you look at the total, by reducing the hardness down to 200, total savings for a person should add up to about $577 a year. To get down to 150, a little over 600. So you could save about $600 a year. Now this is not instantaneous. He's not going to get it the first month. It's over time type of thing. A lot of us already have corroded valves under our toilets. Our water heaters are already ready to fail, or things like that. So I think that was this had to do with us being able to sell this brine water. Whatever we can make off the brine water makes the cost much more effective and the benefits much better. So we would like to have that project out, that RFP project out here shortly, hopefully within a week or so. And then probably have it out for about a month so we can make sure we get plenty of proponents, as many as we hopefully can achieve, and then be able to advise you within a couple of months what the brine water might be able to bring for us.
Yeah, I think one fact that's very important, Don, is that we have a $65 million project as it is.
Yes,
Even with that, the price of the water would need to go up in order for us to compensate for that cost anyway.
yes, sir.
That's one thing we all need to keep into consideration.
Yes,
Just glad we had the Pioneer money.
That's what I
Yeah,
was
it
gonna
is.
say, it depends on how,
But-
Pioneer's gonna pay for the 60s, so.
Right.
Is that significant, that price increase? Is it significant to where people are going to be complaining? Well, they're gonna complain regardless, I mean, but,
Sure.
I mean, just totally crying, so to speak.
Depending on how you elect to use the Pioneer money. If you use the Pioneer money, they don't see it at all for that. And if you're able to use the Bryan money to pay for the plant, and they don't see anything for the plant construction, you will have the operational cost, say 40 cents a 1,000 gallons. How those costs are distributed is another question. Your commercials and your industrials may see the greatest benefit, so your price structure may reflect that. I'm not trying to make them pay everything, I'm just saying that they may see more benefit than others, and so your price structure may reflect that.
Yeah.
Explain again how they would not, if we use the Pioneer money, how would they?
The Pioneer money is already guaranteed money, and it's free, it's revenue that came in that has no expense associated with it, really. Other than us pumping the water to Pioneer, they pay us much more than the pumping cost is. That money comes into our coffers and has not been assigned to significantly. I mean, we're using some of the money for this engineering work right here, and we're using some for a couple of other things that we're needing to do. But that project in itself it's a 10-year guarantee, it's 11-year really contract. And that contract is $114 million guaranteed. But as we've said, we're already selling another 20% on top of that. So effectively, we'll have more revenue even than that 114 million.
And we have 8 more years? Is that
Yes.
right? Isn't that what you said?
Guaranteed.
Guaranteed.
And then at the end of that period, they have the opportunity to say whether they want to move forward for another 5 years or not. We don't have an opt-out, but they do. And then after that 5 years, both of us have an opt-out, but there's another 5-year extension, 2 5-year extensions on the contract.
In other words, this isn't costing the citizens anything, the repairs to Darrington, things like that, because that's gonna be taken out of Pioneer. So,
The repairs, are they to Darrington or to the water
Water
plant?
treatment.
I'm sorry, water treatment, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Have you guys did any type of polling to see how people feel about any type of price change?
I don't think that we have anything on that. You know, what amount would they be willing to pay, or would they
Right.
consider that?
The soft approach.
All right. I'm not sure that they, you know, other than us in these discussions, the amount of savings that they may see is not necessarily available to them either, at this point, other than what we've talked about.
Well, I would think just having soft water, I mean, I know a lot of people give an arm and a leg just to enjoy, going to the tap.
How much do we spend on bottled water? Now, there are people.
Well,
who
not
don't.
only the money that we're spending, but the time and energy to actually go and fight through the line to actually get this bottled water and fight through traffic to get
Yeah,
back
right.
home and
Yes, sir.
everything else. So there's a lot of, I love the idea. I really do.
It's, the fact that we can potentially sell the brine is a huge factor, and in itself, the process could pay for itself, but somebody still has to pay the operations. I mean, you may see more savings than you see cost, but the fact that we can sell the brine water, if we can sell it for an appreciable amount, that just is a golden opportunity. And I'm speaking a little bit from, okay, I'm selling you a little bit, saying, I'm not telling you not a truth, I'm telling you though, there's not many people that have this opportunity. There's not many people that have this opportunity, and your water is gonna be one of the best, if not the best, of any major city in West Texas.
Tom, I agree with what you just said. My concern about this project, and I appreciate you going through it with us, is that without the sale of the brine water, without somebody helping with these costs, and without us contractually binding somebody to buy that water, in my mind, this project, the RO piece of it, becomes a want rather than a necessity when you look at it in terms of the other necessities that, every time Tom comes in the room, it's $100 million
I gotta get my poor
water,
man's out.
and so, between P and Q and the safety of people in the new fire stations that need to happen, and the police academy, and not even counting not even counting what Parks wants for quality of life, and the things we're gonna need to do with roads, and what animal shelter people want. Those are some wants. This is a want, not the 65 million, but the 80 is a want. But if you are smart enough to get it to where somebody else pays for it, then I think, that's incredible. If we are not, but if we were gonna have to go figure out how to get 65 million, which I'm assuming we could use the Pioneer monies against that, and then 80, and then these other things that we need, which come to a total of about 300 million bucks, all the things that we've been asked for. If we were gonna have to try to finance that right now, on a certificate of obligation or bond part of it, and the only additional income we had coming in on that is the Pioneer money, that would be very daunting. And so, I think this is really great, that we don't have to make this decision. We don't have to, until you get the RFP out and come back and tell us what the options are. I just wanted to go on record to say that if nobody is helping us pay for it, that I think it is a want rather than a necessity.
Oh, and that was exactly the way we thought, Peggy, was that unless it could be paid for by outside resources, you're exactly right. We don't need that when they have the other needs accordingly. But if that is an option as available, wow,
Yeah.
And I want to clarify one thing. The $65 million project, did we have enough brine produced from that we could
process.
do this sale? So you're out 65 million. If you do this reverse osmosis, you do then produce the brine, which then can be sold for the payment
I
of the
understand.
facility.
Understand.
So,
And the 65 million, I understand, is what we have to do that irregardless. I understand.
Well, and, who would have thought 5 years ago, we could turn around and sell that water that we were putting on the golf course, and then you're having to buy all the minerals because the water was so hard to treat the roots, that we could turn around and sell that water plus the water we were putting down the Monoham's draw anyway, and get 100+ million. Before fracking, that really wasn't an option. And, I think, I agree with Peggy, this is a want, but if we can get somebody else to pay for this want,
And I
maybe
think-
that's stuff.
I think timing is important,
Exactly.
in some more years, we may not have
20 years,
the opportunity to have someone else.
Tom, what have we done so far in terms of the engineering? What have we authorized, that way the council is aware of?
We've authorized the full engineering, but we can stop them at any point on any part of it. So, at the point that if the council decides that the RO process is not part of the process, then we will stop that completely. Right now, we're in the preliminary engineering. The preliminaries, again, making sure that you've got the pumps that'll work properly, that they're sized appropriately, you have sizing data. This is still and so you're starting to, what do I need to set that pump on? How do I pipe it up to an RO unit? And so that's the preliminary engineering they're doing now. And we're hoping to have that complete in June. So they're proceeding with that, but,
And we'll have this RFP process before that,
Yes.
right? Was that $14 million? Do I remember that right, or did I dream that?
14.5 million.
Okay, so does that correlate? I know it's 80 million and 65, which is 145, and it was 14.5. Is it 10%? Is that roughly how the fee works? Or if we didn't do the RO, are we saving $8 million in fees, or is it allocated differently than that?
I'll have to look at it. It probably doesn't correlate specifically to 10%. There's more complex engineering in RO probably than there is in the other. But
there would be potentially,
yes.
That's
Yeah, in
separate.
other words, that 14.5, there would be a significant portion of that would not
Right.
be required.
Right.
And part of that 14.5 is contingency money as well that I had them put in case some other type of study is associated with the project. But that money's not used at this point, it won't be used unless it becomes necessary for the project.
So kind of going back again, I know I've already asked it, but with the improvements to our treatment plant, just those basic improvements, our plant is capable to provide water for the growth of our city, maybe at least the next 20 years?
Plant, yes. We're not projecting needing to expand the plant in 20 years. It can depend on how aggressive your numbers are, your projections are. You know, I don't know that I can tell you exactly
No.
well with what the projections will be.
That's our existing water plant.
Yes.
So it produces how much?
Tom, yeah, how much
Total.
does it produce
It's
today?
It's rated for 55 MGD,
And
a
we
million
produce-
gallons a day. Our peak day last year was 30. And so but those are the ratings on the plant.
That's the peak day, but what is the typical average?
Our average, up until, we have increased our demand about 20% in the last 2 years. We were 16.5 MGD average when we started this. Last year, we had a 20.5 MGD average demand.
That's just new houses.
Well, that's a big part of it. One of our industrial clients started using our water versus another source they had. And so there's been a significant demand from that client. So our revenues are up. A year ago, we were really worried about our revenues. We're still worried about our revenues, but they are significantly up from all appearances.
In the Bob Darrington plant, you said it was a few more years before we'd have to do something on that, but we will have to, right? Didn't you tell us that?
It is one of the studies I need to do next, and I'm not doing studies just to do studies or ask you for money, but if I don't plan ahead, then I don't know how to
Right.
project money, and I wanna make sure
And
that
I
we try to
appreciate
project
that,
money.
because I want us to plan ahead.
So we have a few projects on the Darrington that we're doing each year. We've done two clarifiers out there. We're on our third one this year. You budgeted us each year to do clarifier and rehab. We'll have a fourth one. And then our walls on our aeration basins are starting to have problems on the top of those. And so you've given us some money for that. We're still trying to figure out how to get somebody to fix it for us. But we do need to do a study of the plant before too long to see how we need to project pump replacements and things like that. Equipment, major repairs, anything like that does need to be done. But that study is pending.
Other question?
So in all fairness, when it all said and done, studies and everything, when could this be shovel ready? Let's say hypothetically, we gotta go and vote on this today.
The schedule for design was 25 months, and we started in December. So it would be about 2 years, a little less than 2 years now to actually start construction. So yes.
We'd see it before our lifetime, though.
Yes, I certainly hope so. But it would be, they're saying the construction time is about 3 years.
Okay.
One other thing on the RO, I wanted you to, you mentioned it one time before, but I wanted to be sure that we understand. In your testing, I mean, you've said in the conversations that the RO unit could potentially cause us damage in our steel pipe, but you did the testing to figure out how you were gonna treat the RO so that all of our pipes all over town didn't start breaking, right?
Yes, and this is not uncommon. Anywhere you're using RO or something like this, you do that. But what it is part of the water won't go through the RO, so you blend it back. That's why you don't see us going from 900 to 0, because RO will effectively remove all of your
All of
TDS.
it.
So you could be, down close to 5 easy. But the water coming off the RO is like that. And then we blend it back into the water that hadn't been through the RO, so it still has 1,000. And it brings you down to those numbers like 300, 150, those types of things by blending it. Plus we condition it more with some chemicals to emulate the conditions of pH, Langelier index. There's several different ways that you measure corrosivity of water. And So that's a big part of the design, is making sure that water's conditioned and won't tear our piping systems up.
Is it just the steel pipes that build up, or is it PVCs? Are they okay?
No, steel primarily is where you'll see your tuberculation. So maybe, concrete generally doesn't have as much of an issue, but steel in itself reacts with the water in your tuberculation.
I just have a question. In my area, where the town is an old town and the pipes are much older in our areas than some, how would that affect? Will we still experience the same thing that the areas that have the?
Yes, the water quality should still improve dramatically for you, but you may have more rust than, say, brand new pipes that are PVC. PVC pipes aren't gonna generate a rust. So at first, when we flush it, to get what it is kind of the system acclimates, you know, it's kind of like, at first the system's like, hey, this doesn't feel exactly the same, and so there'll be some adjustments. And so we'll move that water through and get it to acclimate.
But we will be able to.
Yes, but the water quality itself at your house, other than at first you may see a little rust water or something like that, the water quality itself will be dramatically better.
Plus, we're replacing a lot of pipes, the mains, you know, not the residential, but that'll help too.
But part of that master plans, which will be coming to you shortly, will have those things all identified.
With more money.
Big.
More money.
That's one of those suits that just money
Right.
suits.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. I was thinking about showing up with, holes in my clothes.
Expensive to raise.
Yeah.
Other questions? Tom, thank you very much.
Very good presentation.
Appreciate it. We've got 30 minutes until we have to start up again.
Do